Hello.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, Greg.
How's it
Hello,
going,
Greg.
folks?
Hi.
Good. We have a lot. We've had an exciting week and a lot of updates to get through.
I'm off to a music lesson.
What was that?
Nothing, sorry. A little feedback.
No worries. Okay, so let's get started. Meta, can we hear from you on the dev update?
Absolutely. So good day, everyone. Here to present the development team update. So as you're all aware, we've been waiting for the testnet to be updated. We had some bugs that were blocking the update of the testnet. With Node 7, it was my intention that new validators would be able to bond by using a faucet. We hit a couple of non-deterministic bugs. And then we also noticed that the validator that was attempting to bond was not actually receiving the block that contained the update to the proof of stake contract with their public key. So that was obviously a blocking bug. We found that bug yesterday. Kent Shikama cut a pull request that fixed that bug. We are rallying folks to do another round of testing after the Hangout. Please look in the Node testing channel for updates from Kelly. We are cutting a release package. As far as I know, that is in flight, and it is our intention to test the fixes. We also had a fix to the streaming and chunking API that also is part of that update. So those are two pretty important fixes that we want to get tested. So please join us, help us make sure Node 7 is clean and ready to go. Pending a clean round of testing, it is my intention to upgrade the testnet next week. That will probably happen on Node Testing Tuesday timeframe, simply because we have entry on Monday. So the Monday morning is completely jammed up with entries, and it needs to stay that way. So probably during the Node Testing Tuesday timeframe, we would work with the testnet validators to update the testnet. And then new validators can join the testnet once the update's complete. Rolling team. So we put out an example package manager in Rolling, provided the community. You can look in Discord to find that. And that was just something as a demo purpose by Mike, because he talked about, oh yeah, you can create a package manager in Rolling. I said, great, give me an example. And he did. It didn't take him very long to do it, which is kind of cool. So for those of you that want to use package management for your dApps, there is an example out there. We also have examples on how to use the registry in GitHub. Thank you to Mr. Money Manager, I think is his Discord handle, for doing that. So that was very, very cool. We have a little bit of Rolling competency now in the community, and it's very nice to see those implementations come through as pull requests. We found a solution for using @contract_name method. So the team's plan is to register all the contracts at public keys. Examples of this pattern will also be provided for dApp developers. And because of that, the porting of contracts is now underway. We expect these contracts to be ported next week, at which time the use of forgeable names will no longer be supported on the platform. There is a PR that is on hold. That is on hold because we're waiting to get all of the system contracts updated. Once those are updated and merged and tested, we will no longer permit the use of forgeable names without the registry. I need everyone to please mute. Thank you. Casper team, as I talked about it, we fixed issues around adding blocks to the local DAG. We have moved to the in-memory block store for the time being as part of that fix. The new on-disk block store comes next sprint. In the intermediate, in the time frame in between there, look for increased memory utilization in the node. So as the in-memory DAG gets larger, so will the node consume more memory. So just be cognizant of that as you're running a node. Once the on-disk block store comes into play, the memory utilization will back off. Those non-deterministic bugs have gone into hiding for the moment. That's roll 917 and roll 923. If you happen to see it, go ahead and update the ticket with the examples or the situation or scenario and your logs when you have seen it, so we can keep track. A lot of work has been done on the platform, so we're going to push forward with updating the testnet despite these bugs not being explicitly reproduced and solved. We suppressed the protocol handshake messages in the server console. I'm very happy about this because it really helps me troubleshoot what's going on with Casper. Those handshake messages, we now know handshaking is working very reliably, so we've suppressed those. I think they've been moved to debug level, so you can still see them by upgrading the log level to debug. Validation of the Genesis block takes too long. We're going to be investigating this by the RSpace team in a future sprint. They have other items that are higher priority, but know that even when we reboot the testnet, possibly in Node 6, that Genesis validation may still take longer than we desire. Block stores implementation. The PR for the latest messages is expected tomorrow, and then storing blocks on disk will come next week. Node team, we made fixes in the Stream API that's included in the release. We're working on a compression implementation. We're also working on supporting dynamic IP addresses within the node. And we're writing up a proposal around serialization and deserialization. And we suspect there may be some inefficiency around our use with protos, but look for that write-up to be coming in the next week. The storage team is benchmarking S-Codex serializer against Cryo. It was only slightly faster than the protos, less than 10%. And so we didn't see much of a performance gain in the batch try, update, merge strategy. We're going to be looking at removing the async and leveraging our fine-grained locking to help get us more concurrency away, going to more fine-grained write locks. So we've got the fine-grained locking, but we still have this single writer. So we're going to move to a much more concurrent writing mechanism and remove the async within RSpace. And we expect that we should see a significant performance boost through that process. So that should come within the next week as well. SRE team is working on enhancing the integration test so we can test for click safety. And we're working on improving the integration suite. And then we're also working on improving debugging by obtaining better server logs and, of course, supporting the testing and release of Node 7. Incentivized testnet update, Kelly, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. We are continuing to work forward to delivering a website with more information about the series games, looking to get that complete in the next week or so, and very, very eager to share opportunities and fun ways to help us test a nice hardened network at mainnet. So you look forward to more information on that in the next week or so.
Additionally, I want to tell everyone that if you are a developer and you want to participate in the bounty program, I am calling for help to write integration tests and to write, unit tests. So if you dabble in Scala, but you feel, oh my gosh, participating in the platform at large is probably a little overwhelming, you absolutely can help us out by authoring integration tests and authoring unit tests. We absolutely need help in that. There's a good deal of work that needs to be done on that front. And I believe, Kelly, the new integration test is a PyTest harness, right? So it's not even Scala.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, so it's calling Python developers too. So if you like Python, you want to work in Python, we do have an integration test suite that works in Python. And so just reach out, DM me, and I've got tickets. We can set up bounties. It works well. That's it. Thanks. Questions?
Is Roland testing included in that?
Absolutely. So if you want to author tests in Roland, we are more than happy. You can author examples in Roland as well. Like I said, did a bounty ticket last week for someone to do example, Mr. Money Changer, I think is his name, or Mr. Money Manager. He went ahead and wrote up a bunch of Roland that implements the name registry, and that PR is in GitHub. So absolutely, Roland tests are also welcome. Other questions? Going once, going twice. All right, going on mute. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Meta. I want to go over the ballot because we have a membership meeting coming up, And so I want to make sure that people are aware of what's on the ballot and what people will be voting on. And then that will also be mailed out to members and made available in Discord. So I'm going to go ahead and hit screen share here. Let me just make sure that the view is large enough. There we go. Okay. All right. So as people should be aware, there's the election of directors. So here are the candidates that are currently slated for election. We have Barry Seinemann, Christoph Freze, Kevin Goldstein, Jennifer Harrison, Meta, and Navneet. Now, a couple of asterisks. There's some diligence that has to be done by both of these, Jennifer and Navneet, in order for their candidacy to go forward. But we imagine that that will be taken care of relatively shortly. Okay, so we have section 2 is the member ballot measure. So we have ballot measure 1, which is financial transparency. The RChain co-op shall be required to disclose financial reports on a quarterly basis to be delivered no later than 20 days after the quarter ends. Then we have, there's more details to that. Then we have an operations roadmap. The RChain cooperative shall create and maintain a public operations roadmap that exposes to cooperative stakeholders a series of objectives and milestones for the organization to be presented at every developer conference or similar gathering. Let's see. Ballot measure 3, conflict of interest policy. The RChain cooperative board of directors shall craft a policy that defines potential conflict of interest so that the organization has guidance when making decisions. Ballot measure 4, member participation in governance. The RChain cooperative board shall define some parameters by which a decision can be deemed important. So there's a criterion for what important means, and institute a non-binding process for public deliberation. So this is roughly like when you walk in your neighborhood and you see notices about public meetings with respect to public works that are going on in the neighborhood. So it's roughly similar to that. Okay. Ballot measure 5. The RChain cooperative shall implement a monetary policy to create supply certainty and reduce centralized control of token holdings. The policy will be formed around a rule that restricts supply held by RChain cooperative partners, research, and potential future substantial entities funded by the cooperative to never exceed 1/3 of circulating supply. There will be a maximum supply of 1.1 billion REV to ever be circulated. 620 million of those REV are to be programmed into the mint that distributes them over the next 100 years. And there's an alternative proposal that creates that is an amendment to the ballot measure 5, which creates a catastrophe fund in the case that the co-op needs additional funds to deal with things that might be coming down the pipe that weren't anticipated by the budgetary restrictions in ballot measure 5. And let's see what else. Ballot measure 6, the RChain improvement process. The RChain cooperative shall define and implement an RChain improvement process no later than December 1st, 2018, using the outline at, and then there's a link. And then proposed bylaws amendment clause in the bylaws, Article 2, Section 5, which reads, submission to any consideration or voting by the members will not diminish or override the authority of the RChain board to manage RChain affairs. Shall be amended to read, passage by general membership of vote vote of any matter that requires voting by the members in the annual meeting of the members or in a special meeting called by the members shall be binding unless the board rejects it by a vote where a supermajority or legal counsel deems it to be illegal or otherwise improper. And those are the ballot measures. Any questions either about the section 1, the board member up for election, or the ballot measures? This is important.
Yeah, Greg had a question. First of all, thanks to those who prepared the measures. I really appreciate it. With respect to the first one on the board elections, is there a method by which if all of the if the membership doesn't agree with all the board nominees, that there could be only, let's say, 3 of the positions filled, or will all of the candidates be stack ranked and all of the spots be filled?
The latter is the case. There would have to be some process that was at odds with the bylaws in order to do the former.
Yeah, I'd appreciate some reflection on that. The bylaws, I don't think, are clear whether they all have to be filled, but I could be wrong. Thanks for answering.
Yeah, So I guess one interpretation of the bylaws is that we could leave the seats unfilled and then either look for another process to fill the seats. So that is but there is a clear requirement in terms of the number that has to be provided.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I guess the community could approach the board about filtering them at this late date.
So a related question is, can new candidates be added? For instance, it was expressed that China has been very active and that there are no candidates representing the Chinese community.
I know. I feel really sad about that. I had really hoped that they would put forward a candidate by the deadline. We tried really hard to communicate the deadline, and I think that we need to make better efforts to communicate the deadline, but there was a deadline, and it is really unfair to everyone else who labored to get their candidacy in by the deadline to sort of go around that process. So
we have do not fill as one of the possible candidates.
Yeah, Mike, that's what essentially I'm suggesting.
That they're explicitly voting for not filling that seat?
It's a great question. I'm actually going to have to take that up with council.
Okay. Also, the representative from the Chinese community, Mao, and he posted just now that he made a special petition. Is there a process by which that can be considered?
Well, currently there is no such process, but what we can do is create a special advisory role. So that's something that we can do, is to and something that we have been considering anyway, is that there should be a committee for people who represent investor interests. So we've already been thinking that through for the past several weeks, and that might be an avenue by which Mao can speak directly to the board, and otherwise it would be particularly unfair, I think, to the membership as a whole to sidestep or skirt the process that's been laid out for months and months and months. It would have, there was a proper time to get candidacy in. We mentioned this over and over and over again on the community hangouts. So we want to include representation. That makes a lot of sense. And so we're looking for ways to increase representation while remaining within the process. But the board, of course, is empowered to step around this, currently that would require a special meeting of the board, which is not currently slated. Any other questions on this point?
I was just wondering if there was any other candidate besides Mao that would be affected by any special board engagement in getting him on the ballot.
Well, right now, for example, there is one member that hasn't actually registered as a member or gone through the process. And we assume that this is just a lapse in attention on their part. And we hope that they're able to address it by the deadline tonight. Otherwise, we will be forced to remove one candidate from the list.
Is there? It would just seem to me to be, a human thing to do in the RChain philosophy to consider the exception to the rule, and that nobody is really hurt if we add somebody to the board.
Yeah, I mean, we can always bend the rules and adapt the rules and change the rules. The question is how much of that do we want to do in general? But certainly I understand the sentiment, and we're trying to find a way to stay within the rules and increase representation.
I think if there was a way, it would be a strong act of goodwill, and I think it would give people a lot of confidence in RChain.
No, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. I mean, I don't think there's any member of the RChain board that has an objection to having Mao as a candidate in principle. It's just about whether or not it's fair to the process and to everyone else. But yes, you're absolutely. It is a gesture of goodwill,
and it shows that we value human aspects over the process itself. We don't do things for process sake alone. We do them because of the right thing to do.
Of course. Now, it also
perhaps you could ask the existing candidates privately whether they are okay with that, and if all of them are, then you could do it, and none of them have to expose their hand on that point.
Yeah, but I understood. It's a little bit more nuanced than that, but perhaps we should move on. I take all of these.
Greg,
yeah.
Since we're getting ready to move on, I'd like to change the subject a little bit and talk about the most popular IOBs. IOB 5 was certainly the most popular. The second most popular was IOB 99. The third was IOB 16. Could you speak a little bit to why IOB 99 and IOB 16 are not on this draft list that you just mentioned?
Yeah, it's quite straightforward. To get on the list, it requires 3 votes from the board. They didn't get the votes necessary to get on the list.
So if the membership were interested in overriding the board on this decision, what would be the process for doing that?
They would have to hold a special meeting.
In order to hold a special meeting, is there a quorum or something like that required?
Yes.
And how are members to communicate with each other in order to get a quorum to hold a special meeting?
Via Discord.
So is there a way of communicating to all members that are on Discord, or in other words, do you know how many members there are registered today?
We do, yes.
So the number of members that are active on Discord or have been active in the last 2 months is probably smaller than the number of members. How do we communicate with members that are not active on Discord?
Discord has been the way, and everyone who became a member of the co-op was told that this was the mechanism by which they communicate and coordinate. So that was a part of the KYC and onboarding process.
Yes, but that's not necessarily consistent with Washington law that requires co-op members to be able to communicate with each other about management issues.
We believe that it is, but if you want to take it up with counsel, please feel free.
And counsel is who?
Martin Davis. That was, in fact, the legal opinion of Martin Davis. So we can go back and revisit that issue, but that was, in fact.
Okay, so if we speak with one of the people from Martin Davis and have some question about how to communicate with members in order to bring about special meetings and so on, then the board would abide by that?
We certainly will abide by legal opinion. That's correct.
Okay, it does seem like Discord does support a lot of interesting discussion, but in my observation, the number of people on Discord is quite smaller than the number of members that we have.
Right. But that's by design.
23B 1620 says that given 5 days notice, you can go to the headquarters and see the record of shareholders, which has to include mailing addresses.
Thanks, Mike.
Speaking of items of business that are not on this ballot, I'm actually quite confused that, or let's put it this way, I'm quite confused as Katie approached me on Monday that my proposal for enable a diversified development ecosystem would be on the ballot, and we talked about the final wording, and now it seems like it is gone now. What's the reason for that?
Yeah, so the call for the spec is, at least as we interpreted the call for the spec, is not feasible within the time frame that we're, and would dramatically reduce our ability to get Mercury out the door. What the membership would then be doing would be to delay the production of Mercury, and the board made a decision that since the best thing to do is to go back and work with people to get the spec out, but not necessarily make a formal demand of the organization.
So you're saying that that not 3 members of the board voted in favor, and if I would ask each of one of them, they would say me the same?
Yes, that's correct.
Because I'm quite confused, because I was talking to Kenny about this proposal, and he said it would be on the ballot.
Okay, well,
that is the final decision.
So we reviewed that position with Kenny this morning, and Kenny agreed that there weren't in fact 3 votes.
Okay, interesting. And I totally disagree with you that that it is fine to release a protocol without having a spec.
Oh, we're not releasing it without a spec. The kind of spec that's being requested is not appropriate.
The kind of spec I put forward in this proposal was a spec that is at the level of the yellow paper, which is
correct.
Not a very formal one. It is just more sophisticated English.
The yellow spec only covers the virtual machine, but we have a much wider range of features here than just the virtual machine.
But as you said, you won't release without a spec. So what's the reason for not delivering such not very formal specification?
I can just tell him, yeah. We will have a formal specification of Rolang. Derek Sorensen is working on that. It is a deliverable. The spec is written in K-framework.
Yeah, I was not talking about having a formal specification in that sense. I was requesting a specification that is at the level of the Ethereum yellow paper that would enable other development groups to implement a client, for example.
And we have the specs that the teams have been working to, which have enabled them to deliver, and those are all available.
So what's the reason?
If I might finish the statements. So we have two levels of specification. One is we have the specifications that our developers have successfully been able to implement to, which everyone has at their disposal. Additionally, we have the K-framework specifications. That should be more than sufficient for any team skilled in the art to be able to implement.
And then what's the reason why you think that this kind of request that was made in the proposal is not possible? I mean, you literally said that this is already there.
Since it's already there, there's no need to demand it of the community if you're satisfied.
You said that this was the reason why it was taken off again. So now you're saying that it's already there. That doesn't make any sense, literally.
If I might, again, when we reviewed the items, we checked each item to see whether or not there were the appropriate votes. What we discovered was that there weren't the appropriate votes for the spec. The reason there weren't appropriate votes for the spec was since we already have specifications that any team could implement to, there's no need to demand it. Therefore, the interpretation is for a more formal spec. A more formal spec will require many more resources and delay the delivery of Mercury. Does that make sense?
Kind of, but the proposal was much more also about enable a diversified ecosystem, and the spec was just one part of it.
Of course.
So what's about the other points? If that is not a request that is hard to fulfill, then what's the matter of not taking this on the ballot?
Again, we are fully in support of enabling a diversified ecosystem, and we are actively working as an organization to support that. We're very, very much on your side and attempting to get that lined up. However, at this time, the most important thing is to deliver working bits against the specs that we have, rather than to divert much needed resources to nailing down what we interpreted to be a more formal specification.
Yeah, but that's not what I requested in this proposal.
So therefore, the best approach here is to get this done informally, and then we can tighten it up after the fact. Having to have the organization on the hook for something in advance of Mercury is not the best idea. But we are very supportive of the idea in general, and it is in the works and absolutely going to happen. But we don't have.
Greg.
I think it's time to move on. It's definitely time to move on. I appreciate your engagement.
I hereby request that the board publishes the meeting notes and the vote of each board member on the item of business.
Of course, that's a part of the minutes that will be published. Awesome. Okay.
Not awesome.
So, any other questions that need to be addressed about the items of business?
When will the draft be available on Discord to review?
It will be available today. Any other questions that need to be addressed about the items of business? Can someone please mute?
Will the draft be available on Discord to review?
Thank you. All right. Any other questions?
I think there was a question from Rinnell about the IOB concerning forensic audit. Rinnell suggested that the cost and the time discrepancy between a normal audit and a forensic audit is very small, about 30% more cost. Is that something that the board did consider?
The board considered it, and it didn't receive the votes necessary.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Yes, this is Enzo. This is my first time attending this meeting. I am from the China community, and I am not representing anyone, but only myself. So I just read the balance sheet that came out last week, and I think everybody who has read it will find there's a gap for the next year, like maybe over $10 million. So how will the co-op deal with that?
Okay, that's a great question, and I would like to get to those questions after we finish discussion about the items of business. Any other questions about the items of business?
Greg, I don't mean to delay this, but since the items of business are interesting, is it possible that the board will consider having more often, maybe once a quarter, items of business?
That's an interesting process. It doesn't line up with our bylaws currently, but we could always change our bylaws. It's always possible for any member to approach. So if you look at the bylaws now, it's always possible for any member to approach the officers, the committees, or the board members to place an item of business in front of the board. So that, and in addition, at any time, the members can hold a special meeting and put forward items of business.
As a practical matter, though, it's really difficult to be able to do so, right? I mean, not everyone is active on Discord. So you have...
Any individual member can approach an officer, a committee, or a board member directly and submit an item of business.
No, I'm not talking about submitting an item of business. I'm talking about having a special meeting.
I understand, but the reason to have a special meeting would be to submit an item of business or to hold a vote.
It could be, right. Again, so it's about having a special meeting and the difficulty in doing so if we're saying that Discord is the only method for members to communicate. So what I've heard so far hasn't been clear just in terms of how members communicate with each other if they would like to hold a special meeting. What I heard was there was some legal advice, which, by the way, sounds, it would be helpful if we could see a memo under which Martin Davis advised that.
Absolutely. So this was a matter of discussion, and the discussion was the balance of member identity versus being able to coordinate. And
yeah, so we're saying we can't coordinate.
No, because as Mike pointed out, if you send 5 days written notice, you can come to the headquarters and get the mailing addresses of the members.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily work out well for someone who lives in China, right? So it's not easy to coordinate. We're talking about coordination at scale, not snail mail. So we should at least have some method by which we can communicate more easily. And the way that the threshold is set currently, it makes it difficult to meet. So I think it's really important before there's some voting happening that we start talking about ways that we can coordinate more easily member to member in order to put forth issues that are important to us.
We love it. I think this is fantastic, and I really appreciate the level of engagement and the attention that people are giving to this. It's great. I do think that Discord is actually a very, very good mechanism. As anyone can use it. It's actually a lot simpler to use than an email list, for example, and takes considerably less coordination than an email list. But
any mechanism that everyone is using Discord.
Any mechanism can.
Discord is absolutely easy to use. That wasn't the issue. The issue is being able to reach everyone because everyone doesn't use Discord.
And not everyone uses email, nor does everyone use Signal.
Yeah, but that's the only. What way do you then propose for us to communicate? That's all I'm getting at. Like, I'm not talking about the ease of email versus Discord. All I want to do is coordinate.
Right. And so as a part of the onboarding process, everyone was told that we use Discord as the mechanism for coordinating. And that's why there's the whole process of being able to see on Discord when membership has been verified. So that was the advertised and proposed mechanism for coordination for each member who has gone through the onboarding process.
This is Fabian.
It sounds like Ian has some points about coordination being opt-in. Ian, it would be really great to hear from you exactly some of these clarifying points.
Sure. I mean, I think one of the principles we have as the co-op is that we want to respect people's privacy. And it might not be that everyone wants to receive emails from every member. So we created Discord as a way where people can opt into that coordination. And on Discord also, it's nice that you don't have to share your email address. You can be somewhat anonymous on Discord.
Yeah. So Ian, you would support an opt-in program for sharing email addresses?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Alan.
My question is, would the board support an opt-in program for sharing email addresses for the purposes of coordination?
I mean, I support anything which is.
I mean, it's a great proposal. I mean, why don't we put together some kind of proposal for such coordination? We could potentially give everyone an RChain .coop address, and people could use that.
That would be awesome.
Great idea.
It might be good if the members of Discord whose views.
But we're far away from items of business currently. So if we, and it's 11:43, and we have a question hanging that I would like to address. So if everyone is okay, we understand that there are concerns about coordination, and I am delighted to see this level of engagement. It's the first time, right? When now that there are issues that people are really excited about, we're starting to see the need for coordination, and this is really encouraging. It's the kind of engagement that we really want throughout the co-op. So this to me is very good, and this kind of debate is excellent. If we can, but now if there are any other questions about, or unless there are any other items of questions about items of business, then I would like to move on to address the question that was put from our first time member here, first time joiner to the community hangout. Any other questions about the items of business on the ballot right now?
No, please go on to Enzo's question.
Going once, going twice. Okay, so moving on, I know that there is a question from
Enzo. Yes.
Zhang. So Enzo, would you mind repeating your question so that we can address it?
Okay. From the balance sheet that published last week, we have seen there is I would say huge gap for the next fund for next year of the development of RChain. My understanding is it's over.
Can people hear me?
Can people hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, my understanding.
Can people hear me?
Yeah, Yeah,
Greg,
Greg, I can hear you. Greg, I can hear you.
We can hear you, Greg.
Go ahead, Enzo.
Yeah.
Okay. So my understanding is we have at least $10 million gap if we want to proceed to develop RChain as a project. And okay, so the first question is, what will the co-op or the management will deal with that? How will the co-op deal with that?
Okay, so it looks like there was a bandwidth issue for the last few seconds. I didn't hear anything from anyone for the last maybe 30 seconds.
Okay, can you hear me now, Greg?
Yeah, now I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna repeat the question. From the balance sheet published last week, from what I understand, there is a huge financial gap for the next year's development of RChain. And my read is over $10 million at least. So how is the co-op will deal with that?
Yes. Okay. So first of all, I want to make clear that there's a difference between getting the last code commit before we go into hardening and launching launching the validator network and the expected fee versus there are three things: getting the last code commit, hardening and launching the validator network, and then feature sets that are associated with Venus. So we, as the current slated budget of work, the work items listed, we have enough funds to get us to the last code commit. What we don't have is enough funds currently to get us through the launch of the validator network. And then we have another shortfall with respect to the Venus features. Now, we are in the process of raising some gap funding while we are waiting on closing several major deals. So in particular, as I have mentioned on the town hall meetings, 3 separate town hall meetings, that we have some 8-figure deals that are in the works. On this meeting, I cannot speak to the details. However, for those who were unable to attend the town hall meetings but would like to get those details, I'm more than happy to set up some special meetings. Currently the co-op and in particular the board has reviewed all of our options and has expressed support for these deals and those deals as the particular way forward, knowing that we should have contingency plans for those deals, and we should have contingency plans for those contingency plans. So we've spoken to these directly in the town hall meetings, and we'll speak to them again in additional private sessions. So the first level of contingency plan, and these are actively being pursued with very good progress on these fronts. So in particular, we are engaged with capital partners who will provide bridging funding while we are waiting for those deals to close. So we're currently in discussions. We actually have offers on the table currently for bridging funding that gets us through the development of the validator network, and bridging funding that gets us out into Venus. So that's one area that is a set of contingency plans to the closing of these deals. In addition, we are we have gone into austerity measures. We've been in austerity measures for the last 2 weeks, and are looking at restructuring our assets, and that will also cover a good deal of the shortfall, at least up through the development of the validator network. So that's the sort of the high level picture that I can give you. What I can say is that these large deals involve the resell of assets that were developed with the RSong application. And if these go as planned, and we have every indication that they will go as planned, then what we should expect is a market signal that suggests that RChain dApps are already reselling, either parts of them or all of them are already reselling in the 8-figure level. What that should mean for everyone is that the co-op has more than enough money to continue its mission. B, that the co-op is delivering on its promise, and for the first time we have a network that is providing dApps that are actually of value with clear indication of that value. And what that should do is simultaneously solve our marketing problem, but also solve our development outreach problem. I think what we've seen is that the blockchain space and the ICO craze is drying up, and there has to be a very different approach to the market from this point forward. And this is a part of our plan and has been a part of our plan from the very beginning. So since this is your first time, I'll stop here for a second, get your feedback, and then explain a bit of the context as to how this has come about. So does that make sense to you? Do you understand what I said?
I understand partly. Yeah, I'm not an expert on finance, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. So I have a follow-up question. I mean, in brief, can I understand that without additional funding, it will not be possible for RChain Co-op to deliver the mainnet?
No, that's not true. So with the existing funding that we have, we can get all the way through feature complete. What we can't get through is to do the kind of hardening and validator network launch that we want. So with the current work slated, we can get all the way through the last commits. So it depends on, see, that's the most important thing, is that how you think about the delivery of the network is very, very important. Is the completion of the code the end of the story? So I think anyone who wants to launch a realistic network, the completion of the code is not the end of the story. After all the code has been delivered and has been hardened, you're still not done, because if the code is not running on several nodes all over the world, you don't have a secure network. Does that make sense?
So
it sounds to me like a definition of what is to me.
Yeah, exactly. I thought the hardening of the network of validating is a part of Mercury launch. Isn't that the case? Isn't that hardening of the network not part of the Mercury launch? Or is it before the launch, or is it after the launch? Sorry, Greg, we cannot hear you. And there's been an echo.
Oh boy.
I can hear you, Enzo.
Yeah,
can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're back.
There we go. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
If everyone on the call could please kill their video feed, it will help with the bandwidth demands on the call.
Okay.
Awesome. So I'm really, really happy to have this level of engagement. It's really important that people be engaged. People need to understand that this is not simply because of the deal that we did with Immersion. It also has a great deal to do with the fact that the crypto market has lost over 70% of its value, and in particular because the Ethereum tokens have lost a lot of their value. So the shortfall is not just because of the Immersion deal. However, the most important question in all of this is not not what has happened in the past, but what we're going to do about it. So what we're going to do about it largely has to do with fundraising, and in part has to do with restructuring the co-op, and in particular the co-op's assets.
Okay. So, sorry, Greg, I have to interrupt. Maybe you missed my question. My question is the hardening of the network a part of the network, of the mainnet launch, or is it after the mainnet launch? I mean, actually, this is the first time I heard this. I hear this.
Right. So all I'm doing is trying to give a careful and clear accounting of what we have resources for. So everyone within the co-op fully believes that the only notion of success here is the launch of the network with the code delivered and hardened. That's the only definition of success.
So
Enzo,
yeah.
Let me speak to this.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The launch of mainnet will happen after the code clears its hardening period. Full stop. Yeah. So we will need to be feature complete. After we are feature complete, we have to go into the acceptance phase. During the acceptance phase, if any high or very high bugs are found during the hardening period, we have to patch and restart the hardening period. Right now, we have budgeted somewhere between 8 to 12 weeks of hardening for mainnet.
So if we can now relate that to our existing budget, we can get through feature complete and part of the way through hardening with the existing funding that we have. To go on beyond that, we need additional funding. However, all of this is moot because even if we harden the code and get past acceptance, that does not mean we have a successful network. In order to have the successful network, we have to have clear commitment from a wide range of validators. Now we can talk about exactly what the rollout of that means over what period and how much engagement we need. But the fact remains that we need a significant number of validators distributed over a fairly diverse geopolitical regions. Now we can bootstrap that over time, but that is a requirement for what we call a successful launch of mainnet. So just because we've passed acceptance does not mean that mainnet has happened, right? So the reason I'm belaboring these points is so that everyone has a clear understanding of what constitutes the different stages of delivery. So the code has to be frozen, then the code has to be hardened, and then it has to be pushed out to a ready and willing network of validators. Now, what I have been discovering is that there is no ready and willing network of validators. That has been the case. What we've been noticing is that since mid-summer, we have not seen a ready and willing network of validators. This was before I ever heard of Immersion, or before we had any sort of sense of that we might have a resource crunch, or even that the bottom of the crypto market would drop out.
Okay. So the second question is, regarding the Immersion deal, what does that? I know this is very straight. What does that have to do with blockchain? With RSong, I mean, we can still have RSong without the Immersion feature.
I don't know. Maybe there was a network gap, but if I might complete the line of argumentation here. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Okay, I'm going to say again. This
is independent. This is independent of RSong, right? The line of argumentation so far hasn't even touched RSong. The most important thing is that we have to be able to demonstrate realistically with.
Okay, your voice is distorted.
I can't hear.
Oh my word.
Who owns RSong, by the way?
Am I the only one who cannot hear Greg?
No, you're not alone.
Greg, you need to adjust your bandwidth.
We cannot hear him.
I want to know who owns RSong. Are these
Let me try.
deals? Do they have to do with RChain, or does it have to do with RSong? These 8-figure deals, and also I want information on the validator sale too.
Okay, great. So let me go through these questions one at a time. I'm going to, as a matter of process, I'm going to complete the answer to Enzo's questions, and then I'll move on to the ownership questions.
Okay, thank you.
Questions. Is that acceptable? Great, excellent. So, having done the analysis of the using the validator sale as a market analysis instrument, as well as to drum up engagement and capital, we've learned that there isn't the interest from validators, and we've sort of looked at the various parameters within the interest of the validators. And what we've discovered is that a proven transaction volume is the most attractive thing that will bring validators to the picture. We would love to see an analysis that contradicts that, but so far that's been the market analysis that we've done. So what we are doing is emphasizing those aspects of the validators, emphasizing those aspects of dApps that will bring the kinds of transaction volumes. So going back to the very beginning of RChain, so Ed Eichholt, Evan Jensen, Lisa Rice, David Otto, and I all did an analysis of the markets that we should go after first. And what comes up first are the high volume, low risk markets. And amongst those, arts and entertainment shows up as the most viable markets. Now, amongst those, for example, games is a really good one. Amongst those, if you do the analysis carefully, what you discover is that the most bang for buck in terms of moving people is one that is governed by celebrities, effectively. So, and amongst those, the music industries is the yes, agreed. So social media is a good one. There are other kinds of markets along these lines, and we've looked at every single one of them. So as people know from my scenario days, I looked long and hard at the social media. In order for the social media to move, you have to move hundreds of millions of people all at once to get the kinds of transaction volumes. If you look carefully, so here's a data point for people. When Taylor Swift announced her feelings about participation in the midterm elections, 65,000 people registered to vote in one day. That should give you the kind of data point that you need in order to understand that with just 100 artists, 100 of the right artists.
So sorry, Greg, I have to interrupt. Maybe you missed part of my question. Yeah, what you said is informative, but since Coin Interview just said he only have 10 minutes left, I have to speed up. So my last question is, what does immersion has to do with blockchain? Or in another way, I'm saying RChain can still demonstrate what it needs to demonstrate without immersion. Then why do we still spend such a huge amount of money on the license? What does it? How would it help RChain? What's the use of that?
Right. Okay. So I can now that you understand the argumentation that I've been setting up, the most important thing is to attract the artists. And what we've discovered is that the 1-2 punch of delivering a brand new, never heard before auditory experience, together with the fair rights for in terms of reporting funds for artists, is what attracts the artists. So
okay.
It's not sufficient. So what we have to do is we have to attract the artists, and they will bring their followers. To get the artists at the profile that we need in order to move the tens of millions of followers, we need a feature set that is not seen before. And that's what the immersion together with the blockchain offers. So that's why this ends up being the sort of best combination that we can possibly get. And in fact, we've done the diligence. We've done the diligence with the artists. I can show you the diligence with the artists. And with the artists that we're able to win over, we can move the kinds of followers, which then guarantees in a very short period of time the kind of transaction volumes, which then unlocks the validators. It's a complex chain, but that's the nature of this market. There are all kinds of complexities in this market, and that is the chain that
Great.
delivers the kind of guarantees on the validator volume. Virtually every other path ends up being too.
And so I apologize for interrupting. Meta, could you please say what you've been saying, but not in this forum yet? Thank you.
So I understand a lot about the music space. I was the director of quality assurance at mp3.com. I've been part of the digital music revolution from way, way, way back when digital music was just in its infancy. And I can tell you that a majority of big artists do not own their content. The record labels do. They hold the keys. They hold the keys very, very tightly. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I observed in my experience with digital music is that end users need to have all their content in one place. So it will take compiling a rather large catalog of music in order for users to really adopt RChain. And I agree with everything else that you've said, Greg, but I struggle with this one piece because this was the piece that effectively killed mp3.com.
Great. So
Right.
So I can address both of those straight away, and we can still do it in the time frame that we've got. So first of all, it is important to understand that from the co-op's perspective, we don't want to be running RChain. We're not trying to make a viable music service. This is effectively a marketing ploy, which we then hand over to someone else to harden. We only need 100 artists. We don't need a giant catalog. And we only need a surprising kind of auditory experience. And that's exactly what we have. Number two, we are talking about for the attraction of these artists, first, what you should know is that quietly, but very persistently all throughout the market, artists have been slowly either acquiring their rights or looking at moving beyond the contracts that they've got, or never entering into deals with the labels in the first place. So I agree with you that for the back catalog, like the Beatles, that's going to be tightly controlled forever. We're not looking at the back catalog like the Beatles. We're looking at the forward-reaching catalog. And this is and there is no back catalog for the immersive experience. And this is what artists want. Every artist I have talked to, every artist who's even vaguely understood what this is about has said, I want to put out new material on this platform. That's what.
So, I mean, I understand you're saying that, but that is not a March timeframe. That is not going to bring the validators. That is a long play.
Actually, no,
right?
It isn't. No, that's not even close to true. We can actually provide high-profile artists today, moving material onto the platform. I already have more than 20 artists ready to go. All we need is 10 million users, and we easily can get 10 million users. All we need is for them to start delivering, to start using, just downloading and playing the thing maybe 10 times a month. And now you have 100 million transactions per month, which is more than all of the combined transaction volumes of all of the reflective companies by their own graphs, which they advertised last week.
So is this happening? What's the time scale for this?
Right. So it's happening right now. As an example, this is just a small label, but it's important because it's a musician's musician. It's the kind of musician that other musicians listen to. I just got an agreement. Well, I have to be careful about. I've gotten the agreement for an entire music catalog from a musician's musician as of last Friday. We also have access to some extremely high-profile artists and unreleased material. So we are well positioned to roll this out. And in fact, I'm currently working with artists to roll out content right now.
This is Fabian speaking. I just want to chime in just to back up Greg and just say that we have access to some pretty significant unreleased content that from some of the biggest artists in the world. And as we work towards the process of putting these things inked on paper, it will allow us to be able to pull in what we would expect tens of millions of people onto the platform.
Yes.
We are in the not in the beginning phases of the conversation, but certainly within the space of how we're going to engage as a team on the marketing agenda and technologically how we support all of this. We're at the beginnings of all of it. And the grand hope here is that we're able to roll out a plan that will lead us up to mainnet, so we are in a position to be able to beat out EOS and all the other platforms for the number of engagements that are taking place on the platform.
Moreover, yeah, I absolutely concur with what Fabian's saying. And moreover, this helps us in every single way. So let's go through the ways in which it helps us. Already, RSong alone, and the work done on RSong alone has been responsible for catching and getting corrected 5 non-deterministic bugs on the platform. RSong is responsible for shaping and crafting the data access and pressure on the platform to deliver a 6x improvement on data access. So that's just on the hardening side of this, and that will only increase and improve. Number two, what it provides for us is a story about reselling dApps. How many dApps, how many dApp developers will start coming to this platform if they hear that there was an 8-figure resell of one of RChain's dApps? We cannot count on the ICO craze anymore. We have to actually deliver value. And RSong is the first demonstration of being able to deliver that kind of value. And once that happens, that will create more buzz amongst developers than anything else. The reason the developers got into the blockchain space in the first place was because it wasn't just about values and about the libertarian outlook. It was because they smelled money. But that money is drying up, and we're seeing developers leave the space. What we need to see is an influx of developers, and they will come in droves if they understand that with an application that required 2.5 engineers on the back end, 6 weeks to get done, they can have an MVP that resells for 8 figures. That's the kind of story we want to tell. And then moreover, we want to send a market signal that says RChain delivers. More investment is not what we need. We want to be able to sell our product and have the market feel confident that what we've built has that much value that people will pay for it at that level. That's a win for us. So yes, this is the strategy that the board has gotten behind, and that's why we're pursuing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the most part of what you said, I agree with. But my question is immersion, the technology immersion, essential to our sound, to the success, to the potential success?
Yes, it is absolutely essential. It's if you take away the immersion, we cannot attract the artists. It's that simple. The artists they're not sold on just the rights play. The high profile.
What is so special about immersion? I mean, I am not a musician, but I'm really trying to understand.
Yeah, I totally get it.
I can jump in and answer this if you like, Greg.
Please, Nora.
Yeah, so I'm one of the only people on planet Earth that's recorded using the spatial microphone at Sky Muse Studios in Seattle.
Please
and I was
be very,
also
very careful about the details that you lay out, okay?
Yes, okay. So the technology offers a completely fundamentally new way of recording 2 people or more people in a space. The microphone has a way of capturing sound in a way that is fundamentally futuristic and immersive, which is why that's what it's called. I guess I can't get into too much detail here, but I'll tell you, as a musician who's heard myself in regular stereo mixes and then into the sort of quantum shift of the immersive mixes, I can say that it's not something that most musicians are prepared to hear. It's an extremely profound difference. And I can understand why, if you're not a musician yourself, you might kind of think it's maybe a bit of a gimmick or something that's kind of silly, but I can tell you from experience, and I'm a very skeptical person, and I'm not somebody that's sold easily on these technological advancements, that when I was in the immersive studios with 30 different musicians from around the world who are each very world-class, all of us were very eager to use this technology more. There was not one person in that room who thought that this was insignificant. So maybe that explains a little bit, but it's definitely not just me.
I'm gonna add some color to what you said. First of all, I really appreciate you speaking up. But could you just tell us some of the musicians that you've played with personally?
Oh, sure. I mean, I've worked with people
you played with John Batiste, right?
Sorry?
You played with John Batiste as an example.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with people like Glenn Frey from the Eagles and Sam Smith and Jeff Goldblum and, all sorts of people. But I'm saying that I can attest to the fact that this advancement is real, it's profound. It was invented by the most respected audio engineers and audio technologists in the world. These are not a team of people who are just, trying to have some fun and make some money. These are the people that make the MP3s and waves in your phone possible. So I have a lot of faith in this team. And, obviously, I'm not part of the business dealings between these companies, but if we're talking about the actual creative application of this, I think it's vast and convincing. So,
okay, thank you so much. Now, I want to give everyone a chance. I want to give everyone a chance to speak, but what I'm going to do is quickly add some color.
I just have a quick question. How does it compare to the S3A spatial audio open source project.
Yeah, so this is not a multi-channel audio. This is not surround sound. You don't get phantom images from pairs of sources. This is a fundamentally different kind of approach that was developed in collaboration between Paul Hubert and his team of engineers, including James Johnson, who is the father of all the codecs that you normally use. This is not a science experiment. They have more than 5 technologies that are all fit together. The codec is the loss leader of this, and the codec is resulting in deals far in excess of 8 figures. Far in excess of 8 figures. I can't say more. I wish I could say more. I can tell you more in private. That's just the codec. Nora has hinted at microphonic technology. There's also speaker technology. There's also other kinds of technology, including mixing technology. This is very, very far from a science experiment. It's been backed in stealth mode by some of the deepest pockets that you might find, and they are about to effectively change the face of recorded music forever.
Where are the 8 figures going to, guys? Where's the 8 figures going to? To whose pocket? Is this being put up amongst the co-op? Who owns our song?
Okay, so we own our song. We own all of the source code.
Okay, this could be my last question. So, Greg, do you still think purchasing the Immersion license is still the right decision? Even some people, including me, think it put the launch of mainnet to risk because of the financial gap.
Actually, the biggest problem for us was the loss of 70% of our assets. That was the biggest issue for us. We were going to have to close the gap some other way. We knew that we were going to have to close the gap some other way, and we knew that we weren't getting the interest from validators. So those were 2 things that were weighing heavily on us as a result of the market conditions. So without the Immersion deal, the path forward would have been to seek additional financing, period. Now, having recognized that, the Immersion coming along at the time it did represented a significant path forward, and we're already seeing the benefits because we now have not 1 but 3 buyers for the technology that we have developed.
Yeah,
Greg, just on behalf of some members who are asking me to ask this question, some of them are saying that earlier you had announced that $40 million of validator sales had been spoken for, and that's why it was done. That seems to be a very different narrative from what we're hearing now.
The $40 million, again, we received a promise from a buyer, and I can produce the documentation on that, who then backed out at the last minute when the bottom of the crypto market fell out. So again, it was different than $40 million. What I said specifically was roughly half was spoken for, and we had a very large buyer who was picking up a lot of that, and then that next day the bottom of the crypto market fell out, and they got cold feet and left it.
I would love to see that documentation.
I agree that closed deals don't equal open deals. We absolutely agree on that point. But that was the point about that. If we had been in a better position, it would have been ideal. Everyone would like the crypto market to be up, but it isn't up. And the fact of the matter is that most likely we will see significant capital flight out of the crypto markets. The viability of proof of work is coming to an end. Everyone knew it was coming, and RChain represents the shot in the arm for the crypto market. We have taken most of the uncertainty out of the technological part of this equation, right? I mean, we have demonstrated, and in particular, the proof points that we've got, both with testnet and RSong, should be convincing to just about anyone that we have taken most of the technological uncertainty out of the question. The only question now is the timing on closing the deals that we're doing and the bridge funding in between. Should we need?
Greg, I'd like to ask a question that I've actually talked to you a little bit about, but
sure.
Given that market started falling out in January, why wasn't, and this is for the board, why wasn't more fiduciary responsibility taken to move the Bitcoin and Ethereum into US dollar? You know, say what you want about US dollar, but it's fairly stable.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and we did take steps to address that.
But how much? Because if that was done in a response, and so to me, this goes to the whole board, right? So where was
you're absolutely that part I take full responsibility on, and I've said it. The board made very specific hiring decisions to get strategic people involved to get that done, and there was uncertainty around the best timing for that. And then there was a precipitous drop. So you're absolutely right. It's very difficult to predict these, but the board did take steps to take care of that.
For the record, this is Jonathan. I would like to say that I pounded the table several times in January and I believe February of 2018 in these meetings, saying we have to do something about monetary policy and diversifying our portfolio. So I just want
we absolutely agree on that point, Jonathan. Absolutely, there's no question on that point. And in this regard, our movement was too sluggish.
So doesn't this give one pause about investing more money, like for Chinese investors, and their concern with the current board? So maybe replacing 3 seats isn't enough. Maybe we need to talk about revamping the entire board if they could have.
Okay, so let's go through those options. Let's see how that works out. If we do that, then if we go through those kinds of changes, then the current deals that we have go away.
The deals aren't with the board. The deals are with the co-op.
The current deals that we have in flight right now disappear. We stop being able to do those deals.
The ones that are in progress. The deals that are in progress.
The deals that are in progress, which are 8-figure deals, disappear.
Why?
Because there are people in those deals that are linchpin, and if they go away, then our goodwill with our partners disappears. And as a result, those deals are gone. So
the entire board is on the line for the existing deal?
No, just certain key members. And those are the ones that I think people are asking to remove. So
maybe not.
No, I can guarantee you that that's the case, and I can provide you documentation if you want. Okay, so then we lose our potential. Our only path forward for the kind of financing we really need to get through the next phase. And there's a change of leadership. So now the co-op is in a wobble. And now how well do you think an investor under those circumstances would be able to provide any sort of bridge funding whatsoever?
This is Megan Nass. I just wanted to interject here for a minute, because I do think there's a governance issue here that we haven't discussed, which is, Greg, my understanding is you're going to be away for a few months in 2019. And has there been a transition plan or somebody who's going to step into your role discussed? I'm kind of curious to what's going to happen for that, because it's a critical time to hit that March deadline too.
Yes, of course. So let me speak to that. So first of all, we have created a vice president role, and Kenny will be stepping into that role, and we will be adding a COO.
Who voted on that? Who voted on the Kenny Rose stepping in?
That was the board.
The board voted? The co-op doesn't vote on this?
That's right. The board voted on that. That's correct.
Oh.
So to me, this would be a really important thing to think through during the director nomination process. And it's possible that I missed it, but has this been discussed publicly anywhere before?
I believe that Kenny has been speaking about this in his office hours for the past several weeks. Yes. So we can verify that with Kenny, but that, to the best of my knowledge, Kenny has been socializing this idea in his office hours for several weeks now.
What's the difference operationally between Kenny being Chief Operating Officer and VP?
So the difference is that he will then step in to take up my responsibilities, my day-to-day responsibilities, apart from the technical management responsibilities while I am away. And we will be adding a Chief Operating Officer expertise. More generally speaking, with respect to the transition plan, one of the things that we've felt very strongly is that there should not just be one VP, but in fact, there should be multiple VPs. What I had been hoping for quite some time is that the community would sort of organically discover and raise sort of VP level agency that would be plain for all to see. And I think that hasn't quite materialized just yet. And so what we are hoping to do moving forward is to create VP roles that will then be in charge of chunks of budgeting. So, for example, a VP of engineering that has budget earmarked just for engineering. We have a VP of marketing that has budget earmarked just for marketing, and so on. So I think that's going to help a lot with the dissemination of operational details. So
Greg, you're speaking about leaving from December through March. I mean, from January through March, and now there are issues about. You're involved in a lot of things, and how is this all supposed to happen between now and the end of December?
What was suggested in the members' meeting was that we need a VP of business decisions in any case, and we certainly need one while Greg's away. Everyone's saying, well, okay, you admit it's your fault that the money wasn't transferred, but and that has created some loss of confidence in you as leading the business. So if somehow before you go away, there could be a business vice president to
yeah, I mean, I agree.
Watch over you and make sure you don't.
Don't make any mistake.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I just wanted to chime one thing in very quickly. John West here. So from my understanding, or like from seeing it, the board voted on having Kenny be VP, but we didn't talk about the transition plan, or necessarily that the board didn't put to a vote that Kenny was going to take over all operations while Greg is away. And I really think that whoever does take over, that should be like a community endeavor where we get buy-in from all the stakeholders and like make a plan together, or at least something that everyone can buy into.
And remember, we have 2 months in which to roll out the kind of plan that that we've been thinking about and socializing that plan. And I think that's given the speed at which the co-op moves, I think that this is a reasonable approach. But
what is the plan for releasing an operations plan, hiring plan, recruiting strategy, all of that? Because although the co-op moves fast in some respects, right? If we want it to be a community endeavor, we need to allow time for that.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's reasonable to have the co-op begin that in the second half of November in terms of putting the documentation in front of the community and then getting feedback and commentary so that we can roll this out by before the Christmas holidays. I think that's
I would encourage it to happen as soon as possible, because the second half of November and you're going to be gone in December just doesn't seem to me to be enough time. We want there to be time for somebody to, have you train them and pick up all the threads that are going to be, up in the air. I think it really has to happen like very quickly. And I would be interested in discussing this at the meeting on Wednesday.
Of course, and I think that's all reasonable. But I think the most important thing right now is to go ahead and complete the deals that are in flight, because otherwise a lot of this may be moot.
I would say there's fine.
Yeah, great. So I think that the priorities here are very clear. There are some financing issues that have to be solved, and we're on top of them as best as we possibly can. After we solve those, then we can begin to look at some of these other organizational plans. But I think it's a really important right now to focus our energies on delivering the code and getting the fundraising and making sure that we have the proof for the validator, proof to the validators that we can have the kind of transaction volumes. That's the most important thing.
Greg, while we're speaking of the most important thing, proof of stake has never been demonstrated except in testnet. What is the proof that proof of stake will actually work with our validators?
So what's going to constitute proof to you, Alan?
I think that proof in the sense that the investment community can say proof of work is dead. RChain represents proof of stake. RChain is the future.
Oh, so you're talking about demonstrating to the investment community, right? So that's an interesting set of proof points. I'm not sure that the investment community that I'm talking to is all that savvy. I've seen lots and lots of investors who really do not understand the differences between proof of work and proof of stake. And in particular, for example, there's still a lot of confusion around whether delegated proof of stake constitutes the same kind of trust model as the pure proof of stake that's in Casper.
But that's who our competition is.
Sort of. I mean, I think the most important aspect of that discussion is, do you believe in decentralization or not? Right? And the community that believes in decentralization are the investors that we're trying to reach. And the community that is interested in buzzwords, that's not who we're trying to reach. Right? So it's kind of an interesting game. So the people who actually understand what's
are involved in Bitcoin.
What's that?
There's significant investment in Bitcoin that is going to flee somewhere.
Yes, agreed. No, so those are
Alan, I think this question's way too off topic for right now, and is not properly served with a meeting that's gone 40 minutes over.
Yeah, that's fine. I think so. The most amongst all the questions here, what seems to me to be relevant is, of all of our options, what are our options? Now we can we know that the co-op needs to go forward with fundraising, and that's really the only, the austerity measures will get us a certain way down the road, but we really need to do fundraising. And the best way to do the fundraising is to complete the deals that are in flight. And anything that represents panic within the community or represents dramatic change of management or control is going to kill the deals that are in flight. Those deals can be leveraged currently to get bridging funding. without those deals, I have no clue how we get bridge funding. But I'm all ears. If people want to come forward, if people want to take some agency and ownership here, then I would like to see that. But people have to, not deal in rumors. They have to put real proposals on the table. So we have real term sheets in discussion with a number of different parties, and we have real deals in flight with respect to the technology that we're reselling. And if people want to work with me, I can get you in front of the diligence that's going on, so you can see that these deals are not jokes; they're for real. And in particular, I would also like you to just think for a moment, was I blowing smoke when I said that if you marry the concurrency model to the CBC Casper model, you'd get significant performance improvements? Was I blowing smoke when I suggested that a cooperative would have all kinds of legal advantages? I think was I blowing smoke when I suggested that we absolutely have to have a bunch of portfolio companies that are driving and putting pressure on the platform? In each of these particular areas, I have made I have made proposals to the community, and I think the community has understood that there was some substance to them. Here, the proposal again is to the community. It's complicated. We have to get we have to attract validators by transaction volume. What is the smallest jujitsu move that we can make that's going to guarantee that transaction volume? And we've taken the path that we believe is most bang, least effort, gets us there in time.
Hey, Greg, this is Jonathan. I'm in the trenches here in RChain Asia, one of the two actual employees of RChain Asia, and I'm doing everything I can to try to procure funding to extend us beyond our current ramp. And I have to say, and I have to share with everybody here, that I am getting a lot of pushback saying, why should I invest more money into RChain with the current management, without specifying anyone in particular here, when it has been, to our eyes, to our investors' eyes, that there has been mismanagement. So I want you to help me make a case to these investors that if funding were raised or available, that there would be a guarantee that there would not be repeats of what have been perceived of as mistakes in the past.
Oh, okay, that's great. I'm more than happy to make that case.
And I think putting Mao on the board would address that.
I'm sorry?
I think putting Mao on the board would address that issue.
Well, not necessarily, but having representation from Asia on the RChain board would be useful. But that's not the issue that I'm getting at here.
Right. So there has always been the aim and desire to shift the management of the co-op more and more to a decentralized model. So the first thing, part of the reason that I spoke directly to the VP model is to provide that. So each of the VPs would be responsible for oversight of their particular areas, rather than have it concentrated in 4 officers. Right now, the co-op only has 4 officers, and that's far too few people to engage with the level of detail that that those 4 people are managing. So we need to extend essentially the management team and bring on a management team that has experience in each of those areas. And that, I think, will allay some of the risk. In addition, it will provide more oversight and more eyeballs on the details that need to be managed on a day-to-day basis. I will say that we made specific hires, for example, to address the treasury. But in order for those hires to be effective, they have to be engaged with on a very, very high touch, high frequency basis. And that's not always possible when you only have 4 officers engaged in the whole company. And it becomes much more possible if some of those responsibilities that those officers are under can be pushed over to a VP of engineering, a VP of marketing, a VP of community management, and so on. So this is in part what will address those kinds of things. And I believe that those are the kinds of structural and organizational changes that are necessary. Making any other promises at this point, while I would love to be able to make them, I have to tread very, very carefully here so that we don't end up sabotaging deals that are in flight. And I hope people can read between the lines here.
Okay, I totally understand that, Greg. We will talk about this offline, but those of us who are trying to raise funds for RChain are in a very awkward situation where there is distrust in the community.
Understood, and I totally get that. We sort of have this funny little wormhole here that we have to get through. If we have the trust, we can deliver some fairly significant wins. We can deliver them in a fairly short period of time. If we don't have the trust, then a lot of this all disappears. And so this works both ways, right? So in particular, if people make a lot of noises without substantiating those noises, it makes no sense for the board to consider any of the kinds of remedies that you might be hinting at, right? There has to be a term sheet or something else more concrete on the table for that to make sense. So in order, it's a kind of chicken and egg kind of thing. And what we want to do is to make sure that we protect all of the real options that are in flight, and we don't go chasing after what seems to be a promising lead but doesn't actually materialize.
Well, I don't think it's a chicken and egg. I think it's a chicken or bird of paradise.
I'm sorry, I can't read your. I can't read your metaphor. I can provide diligence on the things that I'm talking about privately to people. In fact, if people are really, really concerned about immersion, let's bring you guys out, and you will absolutely concur with Nora that it is a transformative experience. This is not this is a once in a lifetime event with respect to technology.
I think I think confidence that it will happen is if for everything we do, we have a primary and secondary person in every activity we're in. And it's not you, Greg. And those are the activities that we're doing. Other things are not a collective thing. They're somebody's flights of fancy.
I'm not following you, Jim. I absolutely believe there should be oversight, and that's why, for example, there's a board of 8 and what should be 9 people, and no decisions have been made by the co-op without above 25K without the will of the board.
Hey, can I chime in real quick? I think I have a proposal that doesn't risk any current deals and may actually build confidence in any bridge investors. I think that we come together with particularly qualified members to help Kenny develop that operational roadmap that includes recommendations for the roles and filling of any new roles. And then what we do is get if there are, leads that are not, that are interested in that, then we get them to back that also as well with the community, so that there's clear sentiment that, potential bridge funders will invest if, that clarity is provided.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea. I mean, that's so that lends that helps in terms of priorities, right? So if we have this clear roadmap with respect to filling out the management team, so that there's additional expertise and oversight as a part of the management team, then I think that may allay some investor fears. And again, if there are any investors who are actual and really want to talk turkey, then we can talk to them specifically about what the kinds of oversight they would like to see, and see if our plan matches their concerns or meets their concerns.
Yeah,
and Greg, you know that I'm doing that with Peter, and I will continue to do so.
I very much appreciate your efforts, Jonathan. I really do.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jim.
Yeah, no, I was talking about really preparing for going away, and just having a spreadsheet of the activities and the primary and secondary person for when he's away. And yes, filling the manager roles can be related to that, but it wasn't what I was talking about.
Okay, good. So I think we're almost an hour over. I am really, really happy that there's so much engagement and so much, so many people speaking up and wanting to make sure that we do the right thing here. I absolutely, I think this is what the co-op is all about: is to get people engaged and to make sure that people do the right thing. There are always risks in doing these kinds of ventures, and we have eliminated a giant chunk of risks, and we are poised to be able to make some huge successes. I mean, really, really big successes. And so I would encourage the community, if there's anyone in the community who would like to see the details on those deals or on the engagements that are in flight, please, we can coordinate those, and I can speak to you privately and provide the diligence and the intelligence. But it's really, really important, if we don't want to kill those opportunities, that we not panic, that we have some patience, and that we show the fortitude, because absolutely we will get through this, and everyone is going to be very, very happy.
This is Fabian, and I will echo the sentiment and just say, just please have faith, everybody. I know the market, we all know the market is down. We all see how Rock is performing. We haven't launched our mainnet yet. There's a bunch of deals that we're working on trying to pull together. And God willing, by the time we reach mainnet at the end of March, we'll be really, really happy about where we've all landed. There's a lot of steps in front of us, and I know there's a lot of uneasiness around looking at where the numbers are going and how they're going up and down, but this will change as we are really, the team is diligently working on making these things come together properly.
Yeah.
I would like to jump in.
We each do our work.
Exactly. Thanks.
Okay. I would like to jump in and say that I do know something about what's going on with the technology and the possible deals that are going on, and happily, the valuation of this technology has nothing to do with the crypto market. This is totally independent of that. So
Yeah.
that gives me great faith, and I think that's something Greg and Fabian that you both need to emphasize when you talk about this.
Yeah, no, I think that's it's a really important point, Jonathan. It is that the bets we've made, they begin to diversify the co-op's position technologically, so that at least with respect to some of these deals, there's not, if there is a major capital flight from crypto and it passes us by, we still will be able to have a very, very deep bank account, much bigger than what we had before. and without the same kind of exposure. And I think also that people will, if this comes about the way we hope that it comes about, that people, if we had gotten through this without a lot of kerfluffle, people would not have said, oh, we weren't accountable, oh, we did the wrong thing. In fact, people would be very, very happy with the way things turn out. Right. Yeah, we absolutely, we do understand that there are certain things that could have been addressed, but it's always easier to sort of have that position in hindsight.
Right, but having said that, there is a very likely possible upside to this. I still have to say that I think it was bad money management to risk such a large quantity of our liquid assets prior to launching mainnet, and I will stand by that. I understand that there's a possible gambler's upside to all of this, but I do not approve overall of what happened in the past there. But
your position is heard. The board had a very, very vigorous debate on this point, as the recordings will show. We had a vigorous debate, and we took the votes, and it passed.
Oh well, I'm not blaming any one person. I'm just.
Yeah. Understood. Okay. So, are there any other questions, comments, or with respect to practical steps forward? Right. We can do all kinds of forensic analysis.
I would like to ask a question regarding the bridge funding. How exactly is it supposed to happen?
How? Well, we are speaking with currently 3 different parties. Sorry.
So it won't involve selling rocks.
The bridge funding, in part, can be secured with rocks, but that's not the idea. The idea is not to sell rocks, but in fact to get bridge funding that's securitized in another way.
But assuming that, let's assume the worst case scenario, that it's not possible to do those deals.
Okay, if you want to assume that, go ahead. And then what?
No. So my question is just this: it's like if the bridge funding could involve selling rocks at a very low, because I assume if you need to sell quickly, you need to sell below market price. So will it be an option to sell rocks below market price to do the bridge funding?
That's not currently what we're considering. We're not considering deals like that.
So, Greg, what's the cost to RChain then, and the co-op?
What's the cost of what?
So, of these deals, they're not going to do it for free, are they? There's going to be some cost to the co-op.
The bridge funding deals?
The bridge funding or the longer term deals? It doesn't matter. Both parts. What is going to be the long?
No. So the longer term deals, the co-op makes money. There's no cost. The co-op makes money, a lot of money. The bridge funding, though, if we think about them as effectively like loans with interest that are securitized by certain assets, that would be one way to talk about it.
And those assets being?
But at this point, it would be premature because we're in the middle of negotiations on a streamed interface to talk about those details. If you would like to talk about them privately, I'm more than happy to, but it's a really, really bad idea from a negotiating perspective, and I think every serious investor here knows that, to not talk about those details here.
Right. You did say they may be secured in rock.
They may be secured in rock. That's correct, and that's about the level of detail that we should go into on a live streamed channel. Does that make sense?
Yeah. How close are we to actually finalizing those deals?
Each one of these is in different stages of finalization. Again,
we're talking days, weeks.
I'm happy to. Some of them are days. And some of them are weeks.
Okay, thank you.
So Greg, last time we met in person, I had asked for the financial statements for the last couple of quarters to be published. Is there a reason why the co-op hasn't? To me, it raises the question about basic accounting beyond financial controls.
You're absolutely right, and you know, I've been asking that we do that repeatedly. So I think probably the best thing to do is to start to have a since we want to we want to be pretty transparent about all of that, to not just have them released to GitHub, but to have a place on the website where they're released. But we can absolutely get the let's see. I know that we released Q1, so we want Q2 and Q3 released. So we should be able to prepare those and get those out.
Is Q1 on GitHub?
I believe it is, yeah.
Okay, I'll look. I haven't seen them. Yeah, to me, investors will look for these kinds of things to just see if the co-op's in order.
Yeah, of course. It's a perfectly reasonable request. Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments that we want to address here? Going once.
Thank you for holding this so long.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm so happy that so many people are engaged and taking this seriously. I'm really delighted. If people would like the diligence, then let's please set up a time. If people want, I can be over in my Zoom room beginning now. I can jump over to my Zoom room now for people who would like to see the diligence.
Oh, okay. Can you share the URL in the chat?
Sure. Okay. All right. I'll see those people who want over there.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'll be back soon. See you soon.
Take care. Bye.